Hi, I'm Ellen from the Chili Dog. Today I'm going to show you how to knit the left-hand triangles like those used in my Bon Voyage shawl and many other Entrelac designs. Like the right-hand triangles, these left-hand triangles are almost always worked in stockinette stitch, which just means they're knit on the right side and purled on the wrong side. We'll begin by picking up stitches along the edge of this final rectangle, just like we did for the right side rectangles. Then the first 2 stitches of every wrong side row are worked together to create this vertical edge of the triangle. And on right side rows, we'll simply knit across the triangle. Let's get started. Picking up stitches for the left-hand triangle is almost exactly the same process as it was for picking up the stitches here for the right side rectangles. Stitches are going to be picked up every other row along the edge of this next rectangle. And my rectangles are 28 rows long, so I know I need to pick up 14 stitches. Some knitters just like to use their right needle to pick up stitches. However, I generally like to get a little bit of help from the left needle because it makes it a little bit easier for me to see what I'm doing, and it's a little bit easier to manipulate your knitting. Before I pick up any stitches, I'm going to place a locking stitch marker right here on my right needle, and that's just going to be a visual cue for me that separates the stitches from the last rectangle I just knit to the stitches I'm picking up along the edge. And I'll remove that after a couple of rows of knitting. Now I'm going to look for landmarks to help me place and pick up my stitches. Right up here is the last stitch from that lower rectangle that's been worked together with the stitch, with the stitch from this last rectangle. I don't necessarily want to put a new stitch or pick up a stitch in that join, so I'm going to skip it. This little bump is the row that I want to skip, and then this is where I'm going to pick up my first stitch under the strand by inserting my left needle tip from front to back under the strand. And doing that places the stitch on my left needle so that the right or leading leg is at the front and the left or trailing leg of the stitch is at the back, and that's how stitches are conventionally mounted in knitting. So it's what you would generally expect to see. You have a couple of options when picking up stitches. You can either knit through that stitch that you just lifted or work it through the back loop. However you picked up your stitches for the right side rectangles is exactly how you should do it for this triangle that we're working now. So I worked all my picked up stitches by working through the back loop, so I'm going to continue doing the same thing. So I'm going to knit this picked up strand through the back loop, and what that does is it twists that lifted up strand, and it just makes things a little bit more inconspicuous along that picked up edge on the wrong side of my work. So this is the twisted strand that I just worked into. There's the bump that I'm going to skip, and there's the next strand that I'm going to lift up by inserting my left needle from front to back and then knit through the back loop. Here's my twisted strand. There's the bump that I'm skipping, and then insert my needle from front to back and knit through the back loop. And just like before, after a little bit of practice, you're not going to need to talk yourself through every one. You'll be able to see these landmarks as you're going and just kind of get a feel for where you need to place the next stitch. So there's the twisted stitch that I just lifted. There's the bump for the row I'm going to skip, and I'll insert my needle under that strand and knit through the back loop. So far I've picked up 4 stitches. I'm going to continue on and pick up the remaining 10 along the edge of my knitting. Once all of my stitches have been picked up, we're ready to start working the triangle. So turn your work over to the other side. And now every wrong side row of the triangle is going to be the same. We're going to purl the first 2 stitches of the row together. And then purl across all the remaining triangle stitches. Once we get to the end of the triangle stitches, we'll turn. And every right side row, again, is exactly the same. Every right side row of the triangle, you're just going to knit all the way across the triangle stitches. When you get to the end of the triangle, turn your work over. On the wrong side, purl 2 together at the beginning of the row, and then purl across the remaining triangle stitches and turn. Now that I'm at the point that there is a pretty sizable height difference between the side of my new triangle and the side of this previous rectangle, I'm going to take off my stitch marker just because I don't need it anymore to remind me to stop right there and turn my work. I can easily see that I'm not accidentally going to keep going that way. So all right side rows, just knit all the way across. And then on the wrong side rows, purl 2 together and then purl all the way across. And you continue until you have 1 stitch remaining on your right hand needle and you end after a wrong side row. I'm almost done with my left hand triangle. I've worked the last right side row and knit 2 stitches. Now I'm going to turn my work over to the other side, and on the last wrong side row, I'm simply going to purl 2 stitches together. And that's it. My triangle is complete. So I have 1 stitch left on my right needle and I'm ready to start working my wrong side rectangles. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to work left hand triangles in Entrelac. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you're ready to try Entrelac in a pattern, head over to the shop section of thechilidog.com and look for my Bon Voyage shawl. Until we stitch again, happy knitting!